Welcome to Guy Code, a podcast dedicated to imparting dad wisdom to my son, with your host, Koji Steven Sakai, and friends.
All righty. Welcome. I'm Koji, and this is episode number 23 of the Guy Code. This week, I'm excited to bring on a friend, Dr. Gudiel Crosthwaite. Did I say it correctly? I'm always okay.
Yeah. It took me years to figure it out myself. So,
who is the superintendent of the Lynwood Unified School District here in Los Angeles? Hi, Gudiel. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you, and I'm excited to be here. Awesome.
And I'm honest. I'm happy and excited to have you on the show. But I have to be honest. Whenever I speak to a principal, a teacher, a school administrator, I get nervous and defensive. So this conversation might be a little bit tough on me, but my wife actually makes fun of me because when I go to the teacher parent conferences, my arms are folded and I'm very defensive the whole time because I think I'm going to get in trouble. But
that's funny.
Gudiel, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, my name is Gudiel Crosthwaite. I grew up in the Southeast LA area. I grew up in primarily Bell Gardens, California. We moved around a lot as a kid. I attended public schools. And when I was in school, I loved learning, but I didn't like school. I didn't like the formal structures of school. But nonetheless, I ended up going to UCLA for undergraduate school. And there I tutored through a nonprofit called Prison Coalition. And while I was tutoring, it made me reflect a lot about my own educational experiences. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I should go back and talk to the students at the school that I attended. And when I went back to speak with them, I thought nothing's changed. And of course, nothing had changed. It had only been 4 years since I had graduated, but it made me reflect more and become more interested in going into education. So I've taught at the middle school, at the high school, and I've served as an administrator at elementary, middle school, and high school. And I am now finishing up my third year as superintendent here in Lynwood Unified. And I think I started in education in 1994. So it's been some time,
That was right when I was graduating high school. That's perfect. That's a long time. So let's get into it. We're going to be doing general advice today. So I'm super curious to hear what kind of general advice you have. So why don't you get us started?
Well, yeah. So I've been thinking a lot about this for the last couple of weeks, ever since you asked me about being a guest, and because I want to take it seriously. And yesterday I spoke with my son. I said, "Hey, I have 4 things that I've already been thinking about, but I need one more. What advice would you give to an incoming third grader, a 9-year-old?" And so what he says, "Dad, I'm not the best person to give advice." I'm like, "Yes, you are. You're 15. You've gone through some experiences. We're always on top of you about whatever, right?" And he says, "Well, if I can give him one advice, tell him not to procrastinate." And so I want to start off with that one because I feel like that's one of those things where you oftentimes are told, don't wait to the last minute, but time goes by fast. And I remember my daughter telling me, when you're 9, a year seems like a long time because it's 1/9 or almost 1/10 of your life, right? But when you get older, a year is not as big of a time. But it's one of those things where you got to learn early on is not to procrastinate and make sure that you make the most of your time, whether it be, experiencing with someone else, trying to stay productive, but don't procrastinate, get things done. And I thought that was a good piece of advice. So that's the one I'm starting off with.
That's a great piece of advice. And that's something that I've struggled to talk to my son about because I'm very much a do something every day a little bit, because over the time it'll help. So for example, like when I clean up my house, I have one chore every day about cleaning my house. And so over the course of a week and a month, it's all clean. It's just every day it's like, oh, today I'm cleaning this bathroom. Tomorrow I'm going to clean that bathroom. The next day I'm cleaning the kitchen. And that way it's just, I don't have to do it all at one time. And it's a little bit easier, but totally, or even with homework, with your essays, if you wait till the last second, it becomes really tough. But if you do every day a little bit before, and then on the last day, you're not nearly as stressed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, you're getting it done. you got a schedule, you got a system there, so it works for you.
Yeah, but definitely that's something that that I try to talk to him about a lot, but he doesn't listen to me about it. But definitely, I think that's that's great advice, because when you're young, you just think you have a lot of time, and when you get
Yeah.
older, you realize that you don't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let him know that this came from a 15-year-old. So
Yeah. So it's almost only 6 years older. So he has.
yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, let me hear your second piece of advice.
All right. So, being in education, I got to start off with make sure you read.
Yeah.
Reading is so important. And for me, reading transformed my life. And I remember I've always been asked the question, how is it that you were able to come from your experiences, your background, and still be able to graduate from high school, go off to college, and be in a position where you're at today? And I tell people that, it's almost happened by accident, because I shouldn't necessarily be here, right? And I'm the only person in my family who actually graduated from high school. But one of those things that made a difference for me was reading. I would immerse myself in books when I was younger, and I still read today, of course. But I remember growing up, I was always being told, like, put the book down, don't bring the book to the table, go to sleep, put your book away. But I love reading because it took me somewhere else. It helped me escape from my reality. But it also exposed me to ideas and concepts and different worlds that I did not experience growing up as a child. And if it wasn't for books, I wouldn't have had those other eye-opening, experiences, or had the chance to learn from someone else's experiences, whether it be a contemporary or from a different time period as well. So reading is one of those critical things. And I tell parents and educators, when you're younger, elementary age, the biggest academic achievement indicator is reading. You can have 10 hours of homework, it's not going to make a big difference. But if you're reading every day, that's going to really make a difference. And that's something that's going to stay with you forever as well.
Yeah, I'm constantly surprised by well, let me just say that I think people who read are usually the better writers. And I'm constantly surprised when I'm reading people's emails or people's writings and all that it almost looks like they're illiterate, even though I know that they're not. I mean, even if college educated, some people with postgraduate degrees, because they're not readers, they can't write. And because they can't write, they come off as not sounding as intelligent as they could, or they are, that's always something that's super frustrating. Because like you, I'm a writer, so I've always been a reader, and I've read all my life, and I love reading. But let me ask you this: what's your favorite book?
Wow, I have a lot, and it's hard for me to choose one. But I would say one of the classics for me, being in education, is Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. It's a really thin book, but it was an eye-opening experience for me to read while I was in college. And it's a book that talks to me, and I felt that it's just a different way to perceive education and what it is and what it can do for people. And then in terms of fiction, I have a lot of fiction things that I really, really have enjoyed, whether it be something like East of Eden.
I love East of Eden.
Just like some of those classics. But
nobody ever mentions East of Eden, but that's one of my favorite books for sure.
Yeah, it's a really good book. I enjoyed that one. I enjoyed The Hunchback of Notre Dame. So there's just different books. I love reading, and I'm constantly having my list of books ready to go as well.
Wait, East of Eden, was that the one where he had the Asian American guy who pretended to speak in kind of a Chinese, like a fake Chinese dialect? Or is that another? No, it must be another Steinbeck. But
yeah, not sure.
Steinbeck did this thing.
That.
He did this thing which amazed me when I read it in college. But he had this character who was Chinese American, and he spoke in pidgin English, like really, really like stereotypical racist, Chinese Asian kind of, Asian stereotype talking. But then Steinbeck did this amazing thing because he basically later that character came back, and I was kind of irritated by the character, obviously. But then he came back and he actually spoke regular English to this other farmer. And the farmer's like, why do you talk like that to other people? And he said, well, if I talk normal like this, they won't understand me. They don't think that.
Wow.
And it just blew me away because this is early 20th century.
Yes, right.
And like, especially like, Caucasian writers who are, who have a lot of privilege at that point, they're not thinking about people of color in that way. And for him to kind of have that, being able to see that a character could be this complex, even if it's a small character, was really, really, that's what made me fall in love with him. I'm pretty sure that's East of Eden, but I could be wrong. It's a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I'm gonna have to go back. I mean, it's been a while since I read that book,
Yeah.
but it also stands out as one of my favorites of all
Yeah.
time.
My two favorite books, and I'll name one of them, is Romeo and Juliet, because every work I've ever done has been based on it. But the funniest thing about Romeo and Juliet to me has always been that at different ages, the book is meant more to me at different time, or the play, I should say. Like in the beginning, I was like, oh, this is the kind of romance I wanted, right? And then later it became, these people are kind of weird, and like they're too dramatic kids. And then
Yeah,
and now as a parent, I'm like, I relate to the mom and dad. I'm like, yeah, they shouldn't be together. Like,
that's funny. That's funny. Yes, yes.
as I've grown up, it's the perspective of Romeo and Juliet is completely changed every time I've kind of re-engaged myself in that work.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear your next piece of advice.
All right. So the other thing, my other piece of advice is surround yourself by people who inspire you. And I feel, I was thinking back to where I was when I was in elementary, and that transition from elementary to middle school. And it's a difficult transition for everyone, particularly maybe for boys. And one of the things that happens is you're going through puberty, you're kind of seeing yourself differently, and how others perceive you as well. And if I can go back and do something different, I would make sure that at those critical years, I was also surrounded by people who inspired me, who cared about me, who want the best for me and will celebrate my success, as opposed to, the being surrounded by haters or people who are not, inspiring you and sort of trying to pull you down. Is you got to make sure. And there's a saying in Spanish: "Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres." And I'll say it again. It's "Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres." And this basically translates to, tell me with who you're hanging out with, and I'll tell you who you are. And so those peer influences at a earlier age are critical. And so making sure that you're surrounded by people who inspire you, care about you, and want the best for you, I think that's really important.
Wow, that was real. I've never heard that, so that's awesome. But B, it's very true. That
Yeah,
the people who are there to inspire you are the people that you want around you, not people who are like, why are you doing that? Why are you, why are you studying? Why are you trying to be something more than, than your circumstance or your situation? When you say inspire, what do you mean by inspire?
well, if so, for example, when I think about all the work that you're doing, the books and your screenwriting, the movies, that's inspiring. That's someone that I would look up to, right? And I respect and I appreciate that, as opposed to someone who doesn't make you reflect on your own experiences and make you better, make you stronger, and is going to be positive. And I think that when I see some of our youth right now, they're challenged by that, and they get caught up with doing things that may be fun, playing video games, hanging out, but also, how do you start thinking about what you can do in an early age to make your world a better place? And it doesn't have to be on a global scale, but what does that look like on your block, in your household? And I think all of us can inspire each other to do even to be a better person, to be a better to improve our neighborhood, improve ourselves, etc. So
Yeah.
that's what I think about when I think about inspiration.
Yeah, I love that. I wish more people would listen to that piece of advice, because I do think, I was just reading a study about how one of the best ways to deal with depression is to do things for other people. That's like one of the best ways. So I think it's important that people think outside themselves a little bit. Get off social media. I don't think social media is bad per se, but I think that on some level you need to get out, stop thinking about yourself, think about other people, and when you give of yourself, you get better. You kind of attract those people, but also I think you develop into the kind of person that you can be. That's
Yeah,
why
absolutely.
me and my son, we pick up trash every Sunday for like a 4 block radius of our house. But I think for me, it's like, that's my church.
Yeah,
That's where we get to talk as father and son. And we're giving of ourselves of that. We're picking up trash because we want to beautify our community. There's not a lot of trash, but we pick up all the cigarette butts and all that, and
yes, yeah.
try to make it better. But I'm hoping that that kind of thing sticks with him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, those are precious moments where you're leading by example, spending some quality time, and then other people are seeing you, and they're
Yeah.
seeing him, and he's definitely making a difference there.
Yeah. Although I did hear, by the way, that the Groupon, and this might be great for your students too, or your people in your district, is that Groupon, the wife of the Groupon owner, is doing a $1,000 giveaway for every student that to give, for the students to give she wants to give $1,000 to students who are giving to other people, who are doing things for other people.
Oh,
So
nice.
I think they've already given $250,000 already.
Wow.
So I think there's like very few restrictions, but it's for 14 to 18-year-olds. And so I just was listening to it on the news, and I was really impressed by that, because, that most people forget about those 14 to 18-year-olds and they think that they can't do anything. But here's, this person wants to give you these kids $1,000 to do something to help the world, not just to
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. I wasn't aware of that. I'll definitely share that with our staff. And that's, for me, working as a superintendent in Lynwood Unified, one of those things is that for us, it's not just about getting our kids to graduate and go to college and be financially successful, but it's pushing them to think about what can they do, here in Lynwood when they go off to college, post-college, to make our world a better place. So it's challenging them to think about something bigger, something beyond them, something beyond their own community. So this is definitely something that we can share with them and inspire them to do something beyond them. Yeah.
And if you can't find it, I could look for it as well. I'll send you a link if you can't find it. But I think it's a pretty big program that they've been doing. I think in April they gave about $250,000, so it's pretty new.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great to hear.
And that means it's 250,000 people that they've given.
Absolutely. Yeah. So absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
And these kids, one thing I do want to mention is that I just read this book called The Four Generation Cycle. Have you read that book? Have you heard of that book?
No.
And it's a book about how in American history there's these constant 4 generations that have come up, and that the 4th generation is always considered the greatest generation. So the 4th generation, like the previous 4 generations, have been the Revolutionary generation, the Civil War, World War II, and the 4th generation now is today. So like my kid's on the bottom end of it, but end of high school, early college is like the middle of that. And these kids, one of the things about all those generations is they changed the world.
Yeah.
And they fixed the world in a lot of ways. And so these kids, I really truly believe that these kids are destined to be the greatest generation again, and fix a lot of the problems that my generation, your generation, all the different generations between have messed it up. Yeah. And really return it. And I think that, to me, that's the faith I have to have in these kids, is that, I want them to go to that, because there's a lot of problems. I mean, right. There's global warming, there's race, there's racism, there's still a lot of inequality, healthcare. There's so many things that these kids have to deal with, but I think they could solve it,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, when I see them and I hear them, it gives me hope. Because they're aware of these things, but they're also mobilizing on a micro level to make change and to push for change and advocate for change. And it's not just about, changing with the resolution, but really advocating for systemic change, long-term policy changes. So it's impressive. I mean, when I heard about what happened with with TikTok and then the Trump rally, over the weekend, that was incredible. And that was organized and mobilized by youth. So there's definitely a lot of potential there.
I agree. Well, let's hear your 4th piece of advice.
All right. So the next one is, you talked a little bit about this in terms of, doing things around the house, but being disciplined is, and I heard you on your other podcast where you had a friend of yours who's an educator, talking about the importance of, it's not just based on ability. And I know you've had these conversations with your son, but sometimes ability is not enough. And so what do you do when you come up against some challenges and some obstacles? Being able to persevere, dig deep inside yourself, and know that you can overcome those challenges and not walk away. And whether it's, doing it through jujitsu, learning it through jujitsu, through baseball, but in life, we're all going to get some curveballs. We're all going to have some challenges that come our way. And so we need to be able to make sure that we're disciplined, that we persevere, and that we're able to, overcome these challenges. And sometimes that means reaching out to your father and asking for some advice and suggestions, but definitely understanding that these things are going to happen. We got to be ready for them, and we're going to be okay at the end.
That's great. And I'm reminded of Steve Nash, the former basketball player. He runs a basketball camp in Canada, And the one thing that he says the difference between the successful basketball players and the not successful basketball players is that they want to test how much grit they have and how if they're going to come back from any kind of hardships. And that's like the number one thing that's going to separate these players. And I, that's the thing I try to teach my son so much about is things aren't going to be perfect.
Right.
You got to fight through it. And, like the one thing about even jujitsu and even just fighting in general is that, if the first time you get hit, you want to stop because it's like shocking to be hit, right? Especially in the face.
Like I'm walking away.
Yeah, but that's like the worst time to walk away because that's when you're gonna get most hurt because you're trying to get out of that situation. But you have to get back. And one of my favorite inspirational speakers, he always talks about that. I talk about this every episode, so everyone who's listening to this could ignore this. But my favorite thing is it's easy to be a winner when you're winning.
Yes,
but
for sure.
It's hard to be a winner when you lose.
Yes.
And to come back and fight again. And he even says that you shouldn't be called a winner until you've lost. Because once you've lost and you come back, that's what a true winner really is. And,
right.
And I think that's life, right? Whether it's being a professor or being a whatever other field you choose to be, that's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Those are good samples for me to talk to my son about because I'm not into the sports things, but he is. And, I always try to tell him about the importance of character, working through things, etc. So yeah, thanks for sharing that as well.
Yeah. And that's, even the big thing with my son has always been that, and we got in this huge fight about it, but when we go to practices, he wants to fight the people he knows he could beat already. And it's like, and I have to explain to him that that's not going to help you, that you gotta play the people
right.
that you're going to lose to, because that's going to make you better. And that's the thing. That's the same thing in life, right? If you're going down, if you're always reaching down, you're gonna go to that level as opposed to reaching up and trying to be, more than you think you are so you could get better, But
yeah, absolutely.
This is the hardest thing is grit and the challenge, especially also in writing. I'll also say, as a creative field, most people quit because they get a couple rejections and they don't ride through it because ultimately it is hard, right? It's easier to be a lawyer. It's easier to have a corporate job than it is to kind of have this other kind of job where you don't really know where things are going to come or.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, I didn't share this earlier, but I got a PhD at Claremont Graduate University, and it wasn't about, and it took me 9 years to finish up the program, and the average is about 6 years. But at the end, for me, it wasn't about the ability. It wasn't about anything else. It came down to that discipline, to that perseverance, where I'm not going to walk away with this huge, student debt and not have this degree. And I was like, I got to tanker down and just get it done, but it's absolutely so critical in anything you do. Absolutely.
But even in school, you're right. I mean, to me, the thing I tell my son is that, school is not always about intelligence. It's about how hard you're working, how to take tests, how to study, how to work with teachers, how to be, effective. And that's life too. Like the most talented people aren't always the most successful people, right? The people who have the most talent in anything aren't always the most talented. And using a sports analogy, this is why if I were an NBA GM, I would never draft a 7 foot tall basketball player, because for them, that's the only thing they could have done. And so they don't have that drive. I want that 6'5" kid who had to work hard, because 6'5" is tall for a regular person, but basketball is not tall.
Yeah.
So he has to work so hard, and he had to love it. He had to be it. He had to live that game forever in order to get to that next level and to get to the next level after that. And
absolutely.
That's why, and Kobe or Michael or any of these guys, that's why the Shaqs never had to work, because he's 7'3" and 300 pounds. And what else was he going to do?
Get out of my way.
Yeah. Get out of my way. He's super talented. Right. All right. Well, let's get to your last piece of advice. What's your last piece of advice?
All right. So I saved, this is the last one is, I struggled with this one because initially I had be kind to others, but as I kept thinking about that, I was like, no, that's not really it. And so what I ended up getting to was love yourself in order to love others. And I think that if you don't love who you are, accept who you are, you're going to have a much harder time being kind to others and loving others. And I think that love, and when people say love work makes the world go round, I really believe a lot of that. I really believe that you have to be in a good place. And I know growing up, I wasn't always in a good place. I had a lot of anger. I had trauma. I didn't know the term trauma back then, but I was carrying a lot of weight, and it was, holding me back. And it wasn't until I was able to overcome those things and see myself and love myself, then I was able to fully support someone else and love someone else. So that's my fifth, piece of advice is make sure that you love yourself.
And how do you love yourself? What is the, do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, I think, excuse me. I think what's important is that you got to take care of your mind, your body, and your spirit. And it'll look differently for different people, but making sure that you spend time doing what makes you happy. I don't necessarily agree with the term happy, but what gives you satisfaction, what's going to help you out. So for me, for example, it took me a long time to realize that I need to physically be fit and work out. I got to take care of myself, right? Make sure that I'm very careful about what I put in my mouth, what I put in my body, but also taking time to reflect, to meditate, to pray, read books. Those are things that give me pleasure, that I enjoy, that I appreciate. And that's important for me, being able to spend time with my family, making sure that I'm there in the present moment, as opposed to, being on the device and being, connected 24/7, but to being able to disconnect and really enjoy those moments that I have with my loved ones, and making sure that my friends and family are aware that I'm there for them and vice versa. So, and that's what I tell our principals is that when you're working and you got all these obligations and responsibilities, that can suck up all your time. But if you're not healthy and you're not here 100% mentally, physically, emotionally, you're not doing the best that you can do. And we need people to be healthy, and we need them to take care of themselves. So as a superintendent, I try to lead by example. It's not always easy. I've struggled. I've had my challenges with that, but it's really important for me to be able to demonstrate to others what that can look like. And it's, again, there's different ways. It doesn't have to be my way, but I think it's important that you definitely take time to take care of yourself, love yourself, appreciate yourself, and enjoy those moments that you have.
Wow, that's really great. I love that, because I've always struggled with taking care of myself as well, in terms of because I work 24 hours a day. I'm constantly working, especially in my business. I have to constantly be on my phone, or constantly talking to people, or constantly emailing people. So it's something that I've had to learn over the last like 5 or 6 years, to slow down and to be in the present, but also to be okay with where I am in my career, and and
Yeah.
the one thing I always tell my students when I teach is that if I looked at my career now, back when I was in college, I would have said I had an amazing career. But in my present, I don't think I have an amazing career. I think, there's so many more things I want to do or could do. And so I just have to keep that into perspective, that, where I am now is a blessing, and that as a kid, this would be my dream. I'm living my dream, but it doesn't feel like a dream. That's the funny thing now, is it doesn't feel like a dream.
Yeah. Well, when I look at all your posters up in the background there, it's like you've accomplished a lot, and I know you're going to continue working and doing a lot of stuff, and
Yeah.
you're definitely disciplined. I would recommend. I read this book. It's called Mind of the Leader, and it helped me think about how do I make time for myself,
Yeah.
because I too was constantly on the emails, phone calls, etc., but I wasn't taking time for myself. And it's been helpful. And it's little things where you set up a timer on your phone, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, go for a walk, meditate, do something like that. But those are all things that I think are helpful and beneficial for your mind, your spirit, etc. But also it may increase your productivity, because you're more focused and less tired or fatigued
Yeah.
when you're working on those other things too.
That's great. That's great advice. And actually, when I was working at the Japanese American National Museum, I had this thing called deep work that I did every day, where for an hour I turned off my phone. I told my assistant not to bother me, not to let anybody come and see me. And I would turn my phone off, and I would just work. And I
Yes.
found that I got more work in that 1 hour of deep work than I did the entire day. That actually, that 1 hour was more work than I could do in an entire day, because, I'm checking Facebook, I'm emailing, I'm getting interrupted, I'm taking phone calls. And, in that 1 hour, I was so focused. It kind of blew me away that I'm so distracted all the time. Right.
Right. Yeah.
There's so
It's
many things
amazing.
going
It's
on.
amazing. In just 1 hour out of the day.
Yeah, 1 hour, I was getting so much work done. I'm able to write. I'm able to do all these things. I was able to do all these things in this 1 hour. But thank you so much. It's been really, really great talking to you about this. Really, really appreciate you coming on the show. And I'd love to have you on Best or Worst. I don't know if you're interested in coming on that show, but we'd love to have you on that as well. So thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening to the podcast. Please come to our socials. Guy Code Pod. If you have advice that you'd want to give my son, please come and hit us up there, and we'd love to bring you on as well. So thank you, Gudiel. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Koji. It's been a lot of fun. Looking forward to the next one.
Bye, guys.